Hello and welcome back again. This is another video to explain counters in the Do More Designer. Very similar to many other PLC programs that you'll encounter. So let's take a look at what we have in our instructions. And we'll go under Core and we'll go all the way down to the bottom there, and we do have our timer, counter, and drum, and we're looking at the counters. So if we go through this list here, it's not very comprehensive, at least as far as counters go, and all we have is an up counter. And you can look at the instructions here, and an up counter is probably the most common, and that's why it's included in the core instruction set. But really all this does is when a rung goes true, so if we have our counter as our output here, what it does is registers one count every time the instruction set. So depending on how many instructions you have in this rung here, as soon as they all go true, then it's going to register a 1. Then if something goes false, it's not going to register the fault, but it's going to wait again for the rung to go completely true again, and then it will register a second count, and a third, and so on and so forth. So let's take a look at that, and we'll put some instructions in here. So I'll just start on rung 1 here, and just make it really simple. We'll call that X0. Nothing too complicated there. And we can use this up counter. But before we do that, let's just take a look at all of our instructions, because there are other counters that you may want to use in the future. So let's go all the way down to the bottom there, and we see our timer, counter, and we've got a bit more of a comprehensive list here. We have a count up timer, which you saw before in the core, but we also have a down counter. So this might be helpful, and Allen Bradley in their program actually uses these two counters, and you can address these the same. So I may call this C0 or C1 based on which counter I'm using, which address I want to assign it. And I could actually have my count down timer as the same address in Allen Bradley. It doesn't work in Do More Designer. These have to actually be addressed differently, so it makes it a little bit challenging. Now the reason you might want to do this, having a count up timer and a count down timer, sorry, not timers, they're counters, an up counter and a down counter, is that you may have, and again I'll use the example of a parking lot. Every time a vehicle comes into the parking lot, a gate arm goes up, or an input, a button is pushed to let them in, and it registers an up count, so you know how many vehicles. Well, that's helpful, but it's only helpful as long as you know how many vehicles have also left. So that's where the down counter would come into place. So as people hit the exit button to get out, or the whatever parking lot attendant does that, then it's going to start taking counts off of your accumulation. So that's really helpful. But again, that's Allen Bradley. Do More Designer has a built-in one that's both up, down counter here at the bottom. And now you can just use one counter instead of having to use two counters. So very helpful. So just keep that in mind for upcoming projects. All right, let's just make a simple one here. We use our count, our up counter, and we'll populate that in there. So the name is CT0, not C, because C is the internal bit. So this is a CT0. We'll just end up calling that counter 1, and our preset is D0, which I'm not quite sure what that means, but anyway, we're just going to set that to 5. So you can put that as a numerical count of instances that this rung, that this counter is on, goes true. Okay, so we'll call it counter 1, and our preset is going to be 5. Okay, and that's the software address that it's going to go to, the bit assigned, and we'll go there. We also have to have a reset. Now you can't leave any of these rungs without anything on them, or you're going to get an error message. So we'll put a command in there, an instruction. Normally open contact, and we'll assign that X. Let's just make it 5 so that it's not buttons right next to each other, and we'll accept that. Okay, so now we have a counter. Every time this rung goes true, it's going to count each instance of that. So now let's make that actually do something. So when it does get to its preset, we're going to have a light come on. So we will put another normally open contact there, and we'll call it counter 1 dot. And again, we have some other functionality here, but we're just going to use, and again, these two are the same, the top two, DN done and done are the same things. I'll just go with done. Keep it simple. And then we're going to have a light turn on when the preset hits 5. Call this lamp 1. And we'll associate that with Y0. And there you go. So there is our count up timer. Sorry, count up counter. I keep calling them timers. So this up counter, when this run goes true, each time that happens, it's going to count, and we'll see that. So let's accept these edits, and we'll get rid of this just to clear things up. Move this over, open up our simulator, and just move that over. And we'll put it into run mode. And now you're going to see this. So just pay attention as I close this, operate that switch. Each time I operate it or make it go true, I'm going to get a new instance of a count in the yellow box here in the accumulator. So there, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. And then on this next one, we should see this change state here. This will go blue here, and then my light come on, and we should see Y0 light up. There we go. So now I'm hit my preset of 5. My accumulator is 5. So those two match. So we've got a true argument there, and then whatever the output was from here registers a 1 there, which also writes a 1 to this, and we get our light coming on. So let's just operate it a few more times, and we can see that our accumulator is going past our preset, and nothing changes here. Our light stays on, our output is active. So how do we get this back? Well, what we're going to do is use this reset function here, and I had associated that with X5, and it goes back to 0. And now my light is off, my output is de-energized, as it were, and that is how that would work. So again, very useful. This is great for manufacturing. They can count how many instances something goes past a photo eye, for instance. You could count boxes. So an up counter or a down counter or one of those up/down counters are very, very useful functions in a PLC program. So I hope this helps, and we'll see you on the next one.